Yes, on to greener pastures. Well, is there anything else that you seem to be fading away now?
This is Husain Chung from Subud, Los Angeles. How have you been doing, Husain?
Oh, fine, fine.
Can you tell us,
In 10 words?
tell us the story you were just telling a
Oh
little while
no,
ago.
that'd be too embarrassing. Well, let's see. Subud 1958 in San Francisco. I was open after a few weeks. I started suddenly to shave all the hair off my body. So I was totally bald-headed. And started doing latihan, and I felt freer if I just took all my clothes off. So I just took all my clothes off and started doing latihan. And when it was finished, I put on my clothes. So one day, years later, Harun, the bartender from Marin, came up to me and said, "Husain, thank you very much. You helped me to really move in the latihan." So, yeah, how's that? She said. Well, I'm standing there stiff as a board, and nothing happens. So I hear a voice says, "Open your eyes and look straight ahead." And he looked, and he saw this bald-headed Chinaman naked doing latihan. And he go, "Whoa!" And he started exercise, moving.
That's a great story.
Well, so
Tell us a little bit about your writing venture that you just started doing recently.
well, I've always felt that you know, somehow there's, you know, always read about the great prophets, the disciples would write stories about it. I thought, you know, I always felt that the members of the early days, or anyone, should really try to record their experiences no matter what, whether it gets published or not. And I feel it's very important to do that for a future time, that it would get recorded. Especially it would be helpful if you have 2 or 3 people verifying the experience. But regardless, one should, you know, do that. So I always felt, well, you know, there's never been a real story of any great messenger from the point of view of its impact from the members, the process as it happens. You know, you see miracles happening, and the miracles I'm talking about in film. Usually you have halos and auras and so forth, and you see a person being blessed and so forth. But you never understand the process, what happens to them, you know, good or bad. So I thought about how to do it, and I realized after I finished it, it was a real complex thing. So I started writing the story, and I didn't want to use the word. I wasn't against the word Subud, but I didn't want to use it. I didn't want to lay it out so boldly. I wanted to, you know, kind of jack the viewer up so that they would be impelled, be motivated to check further about it. So I came up with this concept, and I called it The Contact. And so it's a full-fledged movie, you know, hour and a half, 2 hours, about these people who receive the contact. So I have the crucifixion in there, I have all kinds of stuff. It's a kind of almost science fiction, but it has a lot of reality of experiences in there. So I put it all in, and I just recently got a literary agent to sell it. So she said, you know, I don't usually deal with, you know, religious material, and very few script agents do that. And so, but she said, this is a very unusual thing. So it looks promising. There's some major revisions I have to do. So that's where it stands right now. You know,
Good. I hope we get to see it soon.
I hope so.
Yeah. Do you have any other stories of the old days of Subud when you're first?
Well, I have one of the first experiences I had.
Actually, let's go over a little bit in the shade so I can, just out of the bright sun.
See, I'm trying to think. The first experience that I had that did not come from me. You know, we always say, well, we received this and that, and I never felt that. You know, the conviction something really happens to me. It's always like that. Anyway, we had my wife and I had been open. Her name was Georgina at the time, Lucia Chung. Yeah. We were living in Big Sur, so we have to drive 80 miles, you know, going 80 miles an hour to San Francisco 2-3 times a week to do the latihan in those early few months in '58. So our car just wore off. And there was another couple, I think Pendleton or something like that, in Carmel, that we had a code that when I would get back to Big Sur, he would call me from Carmel to see whether I made it, because it's a very treacherous road, that Highway 1 along the curve. Papak had not arrived yet. Papak was in Mexico, and from Mexico he was supposed to meet Bennett in San Francisco. So we hadn't met him, so we didn't know anything about it. So we drove that night. We left Lona the Jameses in San Francisco and started driving down 101. Come to about 101 near outside of San Jose. The car just petered out. The engine, I think, blew up or something. So there we were, you know, sitting on a curb. It's in the middle of the night, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning or something, and had nowhere to figure out how to get any assistance. And no, it was a little early in the morning. That was what, because we had to be there all night long. And my wife says, "You see what happened? Look at that. You know, we're driving all this crazy miles to attend this latihan, and now what we're gonna do?" And I says, I really don't know. We just let go, and just, you know. And suddenly, a very, very light air, I really like an early mist, nothing visible, just a lightness started happening. And it made me look around, look at the car, look at her, look around, check around. I said, what am I doing? I said, something is going on. And she said, well, what's happening? She said, I don't know, I feel it's going to be all right. Well, 2 hours later, my brother, who lived in San Jose, accidentally came by and passed that area and picked us up, and so we got back home. Well, as it turned out later, we found out the following week, this Subud couple in Carmel had called down south in Big Sur, found out that we weren't there, and they thought maybe we went over the cliff. So he turned around, called Mr. Bennett, Mr. B then, in San Francisco. Well, Mr. B was very upset, so he picked up the phone and called Papak in Mexico. So he called Papak and said, well, there's this Chinaman, you know, that's stuck with his family, and they want to know whether he's all right. And he said, well, what's the Chinaman name? I don't know, but he's a member. So he told Mr. Bennett to wait a few minutes, and apparently at that time, Papa, I suppose, went into latihan and checked it out and saw that it was all okay. So told Mr. Bennett, no, he's all right. They're safe, the whole family, and they'll be back. And later, Mr. Bennett told me the story. But that was the first time I got the, you know, the unusual end of being on the other end of the receiver, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that confirmed a lot of things.
Husain, how did you feel recently when you heard that Papak had passed away?
You know, I just wrote a poem last night, and I just found that out accidentally. It was just by chance, because I've been kind of out of circulation for a while, you know, last few years. It's still a shock that I have not really fully, not so much comprehend. Perhaps I haven't accepted it.
Yeah.
It felt as if, well, to be very frank, you know, I've never felt that close to my own father, and I've always felt I felt so close to Papa, and I'm sure everybody else. But I felt very personal, in such a personal degree that it's been such a impact in my own personal life that I felt he really was indeed my father, and that more than a true father who cared for me as a child, my inner child, so to speak. So I felt I've been raised by him. I've never felt I was, quote, opened by Bennett, or quote, open. I really felt Papa was a channel. All the people I turned Subud onto, I felt always the same way. That it was that channel. And so the news of his death, I felt somehow suddenly, you know, adrift, you know, bereft of this. But I was telling Martin last night, or yesterday, you know, I haven't been going to Subud for 2-3 years, and it's not that I drop out. It's I'm going through something that I suppose a kind of isolation that I've always been, I guess, to be truthful, I've always been really afraid to be alone. I really have. So I suppose that's why I've always been an outward type of person. So I've never, in all my latihans, all the years I've been in, it's always been very, very moving and very active, and a lot of things happening. And in the last few years, it just stopped. It just came to a kind of stillness, as if, I mean, I would just stand there and get bored. I mean, it just wouldn't happen. I didn't feel concerned that I should testify. One phrase kept coming to me, and just go with it and accept whatever. And that has always been the hardest part of my life, to really accept the condition. Always been an angry person, so to speak, against the universe, so to speak, because of my handicap and whatever. So to accept something, for me, I've never been able to do the, you know, 3 pillars, you know, the patience, the surrender, and that acceptance. And I knew I lacked that. So this last 2-3 years, I've learned to accept it. And accepting doesn't mean that it's comfortable. It's very difficult, but you accept it by just inhaling and exhaling and just breathing and losing your anger and your concern and wishing or desiring it to be otherwise. And that's been very, very hard. I haven't fulfilled that part yet. So it's as if my outer life conditions have taken on the different pillars, have taken on those aspects. So I've been alone, but it forced me to write and do some other things. And but there was one person, I really miss the brothers. I mean, I really love so many people in Subud. I really did. So it was very, very hard for me to accept this. But I did. I went along and stayed away from everybody, continued going out into the world. And I felt just like the Muslim, I need to find, you know, Islam spread because they had a tool. One of their tools is to sell rugs. So I had to find my rug. I have to find a way that I can relate with the world, to show whatever. And it wasn't to show them, it was to really to prove something to me, because I needed to gain that confidence. And I'm telling you, this is all personal. I wasn't trying to do anything for Subud. It was just for me. It was a certain kind of pre-hatam that I had to go through. That if I had all these spiritual experiences, then what am I doing, you know? And I couldn't go to the organization, complain, start protests, start committees. That was not it. First, I had to do it. I have to first see whether it'll sell.
Yeah.